I've been wanting to add a Android head unit to my 2004 SL55 AMG. I wanted a cost-effective way that sounds good, and I found a D2B adapter that works with this car. It's for the years, I believe, up until 2004 or 2005 that they used D2B fiber optics. So they started selling these boxes recently. I went ahead and ordered one from AliExpress. I was able to get the D2B adapter for about $150 and the head unit itself for about $500. Altogether about $650 for the whole thing. Doing this video to show you guys how I installed it because when they send you the stuff, it really has no instructions. They just send you everything in a box. To get access to take out the old head unit and install the new one, you have to pry both sides. You can use a screwdriver. I'm using a pry tool in this video. They come out fairly easy. You just pull on them, they come out, and later on you can snap it back into the place. You get both sides out. Once you get both of these sides out, you have 3 screws on each side that you have to take out. As you can see, there are other screws around there, but you don't have to remove those to do this job. Once the screws are out, you can go ahead and pry the center part out. You do have to put the shifter in neutral position. You can do that by putting the key in position 2. I like to keep my foot on the brake in case the car does come on to make sure the car doesn't move and create an accident. Once the middle part is out the way, you can take off the lids off of the cup holders. It makes it easier to pull the stereo out. They just snap off if you pull on it a little bit. And then there's 4 screws that you have to undo for the stereo. And I like to move the screws with a magnet because they're kind of hard to reach. Once you have that out, pull the stereo out slowly and you can disconnect everything from the back. If you haven't done this before, make sure you take a picture. That way you know where everything goes in case you decide to put the original stereo back in there. After that, I started putting the cables the way it made sense. The connectors, most of them just fit one thing. This here is the canvas, and it has different models named on there and how you should set these buttons. It was already set for SL model, so I didn't have to change anything. Again, I went ahead and plugged in what I can, what looks normal, and took the next step. This part is going to be a little bit different on yours. I had opened this before. I had an issue with the stereo not turning off when I turned the car off. So I had to figure out what to do, and it was that connector. It was damaged, so I took off the cover part of it and I was able to just plug it in there without the cover and the locking mechanism, and it worked fine. So yours will have the locking mechanism, but it will plug into the same spot. I needed a little bit more room to work, so I unplugged some of the connectors behind the center console to be able to move it without cutting any of the cables off by accident. This part was a little bit confusing. As you can see, the white and the green wires there have the same size connector, and on the other side, the only thing that would fit them, there's only one of, so I wasn't sure which one I have to use. Later on, I found out it was the white one, and that's the correct one. The green one is not used in this. Using the white cable allows the system to know when the car is off, so it shuts down the stereo as well. Next, I had to figure out how to power the D2B adapter. There is a red wire for positive, black for ground. Yellow is for constant power, so I went ahead and used a voltmeter just to see which one of the wires from the car was giving me power even with the engine turned off. Even though the colors of the wires might be similar on yours, I highly recommend you actually check for yourself to see which wire to use. Once I figured out which cable it was for the constant power, I went ahead and tapped into the other side of it where the connector would go, and I was able to put the yellow wire onto that. For red and black cables on the D2B box, I used the cigarette adapters cables. On mine, green and black is the positive and brown was the negative, but I highly recommend double checking to make sure that you get the polarities correct on these. To connect the blue wake wire, I figured I used one of the pins from the green connector that wasn't being used. I pulled it out with pliers. Then I connected the blue wire to the other side. That way I was able to use the pin to connect it for the wake port. As you can see, it's the turquoise one on the right side of the connector, so I went ahead and plugged it in. And that made for a much cleaner way of connecting that cable. And just as a reminder, your connector from the car is going to be bigger because it will have its cover and the locking mechanism that originally came with it. Make sure you cover any of the electric wires that are exposed. For the RCAs coming from the stereo to the D2B box, you have a bunch of RCAs, but what I ended up using is just the front left and front right, and that worked just fine. You can also use the rear left and rear right, and it will work the same. You don't need the other ones. Now it was all connected, but still had no sound coming through. And I realized that the fiber optics was running through a CD player and the phone system of the car. So you do have to bypass those for the stereo to work, because this stereo does not have the same system built inside of it. You do have to remove the panels in the back. There's just a couple of screws. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more work, because in order to move the CD player to get to the bottom of it and get to the fiber optics, you actually have to remove the top panel. Otherwise, you can't lift the CD player. So you have to open both sides by unscrewing the covers and taking them out. Once unscrewed, they do come off fairly easy. You have to just be careful and move it out the way, and then you have access to the left side for the top portion. Once you unscrew that entire panel comes off, and now you're going to be able to unscrew and remove the CD player and access the bottom where the fiber optics cable is. Once you pull it out, you'll have to take this connector apart. You pull on the tab, and you get access to both of the cables. You have to order a coupler. I'll put the link in the description. And they go in one way each, so you can't mess it up. You may have to turn it a couple of times to see there's a little edge on one of the sides that allows it to go all the way in. So that's connected, and then for me, I had to also undo the back panel, which is accessed through the middle panel here, as you can see. That is to get to the voice module and bypass that one as well. Once you remove this cover, you can see the voice module is right there, and the D2B connector. It's a little bit hard to get to. You do have to push from the bottom side of it on the release button and pull it out of there, but it is doable. I was able to do it without having to take anything else apart. I went ahead and pulled it from underneath in order to access the connector. On mine, it happened to have another coupler in there already, which I used that one to bypass the voice module. To be safe, I would say order 2 of the couplers ahead of time. That way you don't get stuck halfway through the job. I had already opened this before when I was doing my research, so I knew I have one in there. This one was a little bit hard to open, so I used a little screwdriver flathead bit in order to pull the tab up and pull the heads of the fiber optics out. At this point, I had sound. I'm playing it pretty low because I don't want YouTube to take this off for copyright violation. Also, I ended up removing the USB ports that come with it because I already had hardwire USB set up and I felt like it's taking too much space in the back. So I wanted to declutter it a bit. After that, you just put the screws back on. Make sure you connect everything that you disconnected earlier on, and you're good to go. You do have to put the shifter in neutral position to put the cover back on it. Make sure you have your foot on the brake so you don't accidentally have the car move if you hit the shifter to reverse or drive. I noticed some of the wires were still not in the right place, so I had to open it back up and reroute it. You just have to make sure all the wires are safe and routed properly so they don't get cut when you put everything back on top of it. Then you make sure to put the screws back on both sides. And the cup holder tops just pop right back on. To put on the side covers, put the front part in first, and slowly you can push down on the back. Once the front is in, you can push on the entire thing and it will pop right back into place when it's lined up. I know the sound quality may not be the same over the video, but I downloaded this song that I have copyrights to play, so I could demo it out for you guys to see what it's like when you turn the stereo on. It definitely sounds like the original factory setup. There's also a full EQ that you can actually EQ the songs, which was very nice after I did. I mentioned earlier on in this video that I ordered this from AliExpress. I'm undecided if I would recommend ordering from them or not. I had some issues with them as far as sending the wrong item from one seller, and having to send it back was kind of a hassle. But as I said, I did save a lot of money, so it's up to you if you want to order from them or just pay a little bit extra and get it from eBay. It does come with a backup camera, but I have not set it up yet. I do have a Wi-Fi reverse camera that I'm going to try to connect to this instead. Also, one great thing is the steering wheel volume and the next track, reverse track, all that work with the stereo once you set it all up. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'll answer them the best I can.